I want to talk about access relationships. Relationships tell Access how each table is related to another. You do not have to relate every table to every other table. You only need to relate each table to at least one other table so that all of them have a relationship path to the other tables. So, a couple of things about relationships and creating those in Access. First, you need to have all of the tables closed before you create the relationships. So, for example, if I have this open, I will have an issue trying to create a relationship. So at the moment, I'm going to leave it open because later I'm going to show you how to correct that if you do have that error. So the second important thing to note is that you must have the relationship set up before you create your queries. Otherwise, if you create the queries and then realize you didn't set something up correctly or you didn't set up the relationships, you'll need to go in and create the relationships and then go back in and recreate your queries. They don't always pick up the new relationships that you've created or edited, so you would have to redo those queries. Okay. So to go in and create your relationships, I'm going to go to Database Tools and Relationships. And I'm still in the Northwind file, which has our customers and our orders. So if we take a look, we've got all of our tables in the relationships window. So if you're not sure if they're all there, you can click on All Relationships. It'll show everything. If you need to add a table to the window, then click on Add Table, and it will show all of the tables, and you can add any of those tables from that pane. So let's say, for example, if I double clicked on customers again, I have it already in the window, so I don't need it again. If you accidentally add it twice, I'm just going to go in and click on the extra table, which usually has an _1 at the end. So click on that and just press delete on the keyboard so that you don't have those extra tables in there. That will create a problem later. So with the relationships through your tables and between the tables, it's very important that these are set up correctly. If they are not set up correctly, it will give you inaccurate results when you create your queries later. You might have thousands of records in your query when you run it, when you actually should only have 100. So it can have some issues later down the road if you don't have these set up correctly. So if we look at the tables that we have here, we have each customer has an order, and we'll create that relationship later. Each order will have details associated with it. So that means that every order might have more than one item in the order. So the order details will tell the specific details regarding that order. Each product that is included in each order. It includes the quantity of the product, the price, and so forth. Okay. Whereas the order just provides who ordered it, which employee is responsible or related to that order, and the shipping information. So the order details provides the actual details about the products in the order. Okay. The order status, that if you look at the order detail status, just to show you the table, it will tell you if those products in the order, if it's been allocated, if the order's been shipped, if the product is not in stock, or so forth. So that's the status of the item in each order. So you have the product information for each product that's included in the order. So every product could be ordered multiple times, right? You hope it will be. So you can have a product that's listed multiple times in different orders in the order details table. So the products table includes just details about each particular product, the supplier for the product, and whether or not it's been discontinued, and some information like that. So the suppliers table is each product is associated with a specific supplier, so that provides the information about each supplier. The orders are associated with each employee. So for each employee, they are responsible or linked to a particular order. Okay. So for each order, similar to the order details in each product in the order, the order status will tell you if the whole order has been either invoiced, shipped, or if it's complete and closed. Okay, so let's look a little bit more in detail with these. Each table has a primary key. You can see the key associated with it. That primary key, remember, is the unique value in each table that identifies each record uniquely. Okay, so the relationships have been created between some of these tables. Okay, so you can see again, every table has that primary key. It's not the same field in every table. That's okay, it does not have to be. And it's probably not going to be. So you are linking the primary key that's in at least one table with the same field that happens to be in another table. Okay, so for each order, if you're looking at the order details, you have the order ID in each table. Okay, it's the primary key here in the orders table. It is not the primary key in the order details table because it's not unique. Each order can be listed multiple times because it might have multiple products in that order. So if you've ordered 3 items, that order ID, let's say it's number 1, will appear 3 times in the order details table because you have ordered 3 products in that order ID. So when you're looking at that, it's the primary key here, but in the other table where it's not the primary key, it's considered the foreign key. Okay, there's nothing special you have to do for that. That's just the name that we give it in the associated table. So this relationship line has the ends that are bolded, and it's a 1 to what we call infinity or 1 to many relationship. Okay, we know that referential integrity is enforced, and we'll talk about that in a minute, because it's bolded on each end and has the 1 to many. The 1 to many means that for each order ID, you can have many products in that order in the order details. So if you had 3 products in that order, it might be the order ID might be listed more than 1 time. It will be listed 3 times. So it's a 1 to many relationship. So here the relationship between the products and the order details. In the order details, anybody can order the same product, and you can order the same product in multiple orders. So for each product, it will be ordered multiple times. So it's the primary key in the products table. So for each of those, it's a 1 to many relationship. So you can order multiple products in the order details table. So that's why it's a 1 to many relationship. Okay. So the same for the suppliers. It's the primary key in the suppliers table. So for each supplier, you can order, or each supplier can supply more than 1 product. So that's why that is a 1 to many relationship. There are instances where there are 1 to 1 relationships, where it's a very direct relationship. And there are instances where you might have a many to many relationship, but normally what you do is you break those down so that they become 1 to many relationships. Okay, so for the other tables, we've got a couple hanging out here by themselves. So we're going to create a couple of relationships. So we need to create a relationship between the employees table and the orders table because it's the employee ID is listed in both of those tables, so that needs to be related. The same here for the customer who has an order. So you want to link the customer ID in each of those tables to say that each customer can have more than one order. So what we want to do is we want to take I usually start with the one that's the primary key. I'm not sure that it really matters, but I prefer to use the one that's the primary key. And in order to relate it and tell Access it's related to the customer ID in the orders table, I'm just going to drag it and drop it to the customer ID in the orders table. So I'm going to click it and drag it and drop it to the customer ID in the orders table. Okay. So you can see here, it must be the same field in both tables. Now, that doesn't mean they have to be the same name of the field as long as it's the same field value. Okay, they might call it CID in one table and customer ID in another table. As long as it's the same data that represents the customer ID, that's okay. But it needs to be the same field. Notice that it's the relationship type it recognizes is one-to-many. That means for each customer, they can have many orders. Generally, you always want to select the enforce referential integrity and the cascade update and delete. The enforce referential integrity means that when you have a record in a specific table, you don't want to make any edits to that that would affect the other table. Okay, so it's going to ensure that the data is accurate and that there's integrity in the data. So for example, and this relates to the cascade update and delete as well. So let's say, for example, if I went in and I have a customer that has an order that has just been placed, and I go in and there's a customer in the customers table, let's say it's customer 4, and there's an order in the orders table for customer number 4. So if I go in and try to delete customer number 4, I should not be allowed to do that because there's an outstanding record for that customer in the orders table. So you can't delete the customer if there's an order in the orders table for that customer. So when you have the enforce referential integrity and cascade and update and delete, it's going to prevent those types of errors. The same, if you went in to update a customer ID, you would hope that that would also update in the orders table. Okay, so general rule, always check all 3 of those boxes, even though some of the assignments do not tell you to do that. So we're ready to create the relationship here. And it's going to give us an error. It says the database engine could not lock the table because it's already in use by another person or process. And it says it's the customers table. Okay. Now that means it's already in use, right? That means I have that table open. So I have to close those windows. I have to go back in and close that table. Remember, I told you I was going to leave that open so you could see what error you would get. So all you have to do is just go back in and create the relationship again, drag and drop that field, make sure it's customer ID, check those 3 boxes and create it. Okay, so it creates it now. We're going to do the same thing for the employee table to the employee or to the orders table. And we're going to link that relationship through employee ID. Okay. Generally, you can find out how you need to relate the tables just by looking at the similar fields in the tables. So I'm just going to drag it and drop it on top of employee ID. Make sure that it's the same field. Check all 3 of those boxes. It's a one-to-many relationship, meaning for each employee, they can be responsible for multiple orders. So we'll create that relationship. I'm going to click on the Save to save that relationships window. Under the database tools and some of the options under the relationships, you can go in and create a relationships report. You don't normally do that, but you can create a relationships report that will be just a report of this layout, and it will show you the relationships window. Okay, so let's go in and I'll show you how to edit a relationship. So if I wanted to edit, I just go in and right click and delete. And I'm just going to say yes. Now let's go in and let me just show you if I create those relationships and I don't click those boxes, if I create it, do you see how different that relationship looks to the others? This one does not have referential integrity enforced, whereas the others do. Okay, so if you need to go in and edit a relationship, just right click on that line for the join and go in and edit as needed. Okay, if you wanted to delete the relationship again, you can right click on it and delete. And I'm going to say yes. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to save this window real quick. And I'm going to go into my customers. And if you look, there are 29 customers in my customers table. So let me go into my orders and let's do something so you can see what an error message will look like in creating your relationships. So for this first order, order number 30, I'm just going to say I have a customer number 50. Now we know, we just looked in the customers table, there is no customer number 50. Okay, so ideally, if I had set this up correctly, and this is another video, but it shouldn't really allow me to do that here, right? It should give me an error message here, but it's going to. So what I want to do is I'm going to go into the relationships window and I'm going to relate the customer to the order table again. And I'm going to enforce referential integrity in the cascades. Okay, so it should give me an error message. It says it cannot create that relationship and enforce referential integrity. So please read the message. It says data in the table orders violates referential integrity rules. There may be records relating to an employee in the related table, for example, but no record for the employee in the primary table. So you need to go back and edit the data so that records exist in the primary table for all of the related records. Okay, so if you don't, you can do this and you can create it, but it does not enforce referential integrity. Okay, so I'm going to delete it for the moment. So remember what I did is I went into the orders table, even though for the customers there are only 29. I went into the orders table and I changed this to 50. There's no customer in the customers table that is customer number 50. Okay, so that's why it's giving me an error when I create the relationships. It's saying there is no customer number 50 in the customers table, but yet you have one in the orders table. You have an order for customer number 50, and that can't happen. So that's why referential integrity is very important. Okay, so in order to fix this, two different ways I can fix it. I can go in and add customer number 50 to the customers table. Or I can just go back in, and this was originally customer number 27. I can go in and correct that. And then I can go back into my relationships window and create the relationship again. And therefore, it has corrected the error, and we do not get that error message again. So I hope that helps to clear up any questions you might have had about relationships. It's really very interesting in Access to see how all of that works behind the scenes. But it is different in Access in regards to the kind of background planning and structure that you have to set up in the database before you can actually get the results from it. It's not like in Excel where you can just start typing in formulas and everything will work. There's a lot of behind the scenes work in Access.